We're coming off a great year in the markets, but now the key question is your portfolio positioned for continued growth? Or perhaps an even better one, did your portfolio actually perform well last year? If you don't know, or you're just unsure, reach out to our friends at Rocklinc Investment Partners. With decades of experience across all market cycles and a long-term track record of success, they share the conservative values and outlook of regular listeners like you. Contact them today for a no-obligation portfolio review at 905-631-5462 or email info@rocklinc.com. That's link with a C, ROCKLINC.com. And we're back. We're very glad to join us. He does it Monday. Back at Jonathan Wellum joining us, president of Rocklinc Investment Partners. And you can find out the great services that they offer if you're looking, as I say off the top of the show, to invest with somebody who values you and values you as a person. It's a great place to go. They handle my money, and I really appreciate that they are there as our sponsor. Welcome, Jonathan.
Good to be with you again, Mark. Lots of things going on in the world this week.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess obviously the biggest is the war in Iran now. Oil prices, everybody's got their eye on those. Oil is now up about 8.4%, which is translates into $5.62. So it's a sizable jump for one day. It's trading at $72.64. Now, sometimes that can generate a shock to the economy. Everything's costing more, and gas prices are going up as a result of that. And how do you see this playing out now that Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, at least for now?
To the extent that they can keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, then that's going to have a severe impact on the price of oil. And that's why you've seen it jumping around today. It was up early this morning and then it settled back a little bit. But I think that is a strategic passageway. And there's a lot of oil that moves through that. So that clearly will keep the price elevated. Now, 8%, $72. Anything under $80, I think, can be somewhat absorbed within the economies without too much of a shock. But the issue is how long does that go on? We've also seen the 10-year, the long-term bond yields actually have come up a little bit. You think maybe they might soften, but they've actually come up a little bit. And that's just telling you that there's a little bit concern about inflation and things going on there. So the issue is how long this will go on. And we don't know, but the price will revert back down quite quickly if they can straighten that situation out. The good news, we're getting this information coming in real time here. So we could be behind also at any point. But it appears to me that the Gulf states are uniting against Iran, and they are willing to pump a little bit more oil. To the extent that they don't get damaged, their institutions, then I think the price probably won't go up too much. But we'll see what happens here. The Strait of Hormuz is really critical. That's a critical juncture.
And this really speaks to why it's so important for Canada to grow its resource sector. We could be in such a critical place, and we are, but we deliver to the United States primarily. Yeah, now we're shipping some to Asia, but not nearly as much as we could be. If our footprint, if we really were an energy superpower, it would certainly have a mitigating effect on this current increase and concerns around whether or not this is going to have a shock on the economy in total. And yet we're not there. We're there a little bit, but we're not there to the degree that we should be. And this is just one of those times that just speaks volumes about Canada's role on the global stage as an energy power and how much we could be alleviating the situation as it now exists. What do you think?
It's absolutely humiliating. It's humiliating, Mark, how pathetic our output of oil is, given the size of our resources and the importance of energy in the global economy. Think about the United States. The United States is exporting energy, and they become an energy powerhouse. And this is one reason why Donald Trump and his administration can do what they're doing at this point, because they are energy independent. And so they don't have to bring any energy into their country. That's a big plus now. That's also gives the U.S. a lot more leverage in the Middle East. So when you see some of the other countries coming in, like France and even the U.K., and they're softening their stance within 24, 48 hours, I think one of the reasons why they're softening their stance isn't just because of the random bombing that Iran's doing. It's because they cannot afford the energy costs. What they need that energy coming from the Middle East. They are absolutely and utterly dependent upon it. The U.S. isn't, and Canada shouldn't either. And we should be a much larger player, and we would have a lot more power in the global economy. But again, we are just not investing in that sector. Our federal government has been attacking businesses that want to expand in that area, and we don't have the pipeline, so we can't get it out of the center of the country. And this is devastating. You probably heard that we're importing LNG, liquefied natural gas, from Australia to the east coast of Canada, traveling up to 25,000 kilometers rather than 4,000 kilometers from Alberta. You cannot make up this kind of lunacy, but this is the country that we are in. And the leaders are 100% responsible for that, particularly the Liberal and NDP governments.
Let's talk a little bit about this antitrust suit south of the border. It involves Vanguard, which is one of the big three. Obviously, there are more than that, but along with BlackRock and State Street, they own a huge chunk of the S&P. They are wealth management companies and just massive companies in terms of the amount of money they have that they oversee. Now, they were the subject of a antitrust lawsuit. It was brought forward by 13 Republican-led states, state attorneys general. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, so think about this for a little bit. So you've got Vanguard, you got BlackRock, Fidelity, and so on. The reason they control so much of the stock market is because they have the index funds. And so everybody buying index funds, which is a large portion of the investment community, they hand their money over to these characters who then control all of the proxy voting. And that's very important. That's who gets on the board and different initiatives. And what these companies have been pushing, Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity, State Street, is a lot of the ESG policies. That's the environmental, social, and governance policies. Now, a lot of these policies, again, are attacking fundamental industries in our economy. So the coal industry, the energy industry. And so what they've been doing is they've been putting measures on the proxies, the voting on these companies, and putting pressure on the companies to get rid of a certain amount of energy, get rid of any coal exposure, divest this, divest that, all based upon this green agenda. The problem is that actually hurts investment performance. It's not optimal. That's not the market deciding what should happen. And so these attorney generals from 13 different states, led by Ken Paxton from Texas, what they're concerned about is they've got pension funds. And so they've got all their pension funds money invested in the market and in some of these index funds. And they're finding that these decisions are hurting their investment performance. And so that's why you've got this antitrust. I think it was brilliant that they went after these individuals because you're supposed to be a fiduciary. You're supposed to be maximizing shareholder value. And that's not what they were doing. So this is a big win because it pushes back these organizations from these aggressive left-wing woke agendas that are hurting corporate America, corporate Canada for that matter also, and hurting investment performance based upon, again, green agenda and not actual scientific facts. So this is a great win for the knock down the power of the ESG movement. And hopefully we'll see more of this when it comes to DEI also, that diversity, equity, and inclusion, where you're basically hiring people based upon skin color, religious views, or sexual preferences, and so forth, which is, again, not a proper fiduciary responsibility. You're actually undermining investment performance and returns by hiring substandard people that don't have the proper merit behind what they're doing. And this is a good win. This should help get back to more market forces.
Yeah, it's this wokeism that has creeped into investment. So it's not how well your company is run. It's whether or not you've hired enough men in dresses or, it's just...
Well, for example, Mark, Exxon, for just a couple of years ago, Exxon, which is a global powerhouse in energy, especially fossil fuels, they were really pressured by some of these ESG agendas in Vanguard, BlackRock, and so forth to add more green energy and to get involved in the windmills and solar and stuff like that, which they actually allocated some capital towards. But it was brutal in terms of the shareholder returns. It was a bad investment. And because of some of the pressure from the AGs, these attorney generals and pension funds, they actually decided to get out of it. And so now they're back to business again, back to fossil fuels, back to gas, natural gas, and so on. And so that's an example where they actually took one of the largest companies and corporations in the world, and they actually hurt asset allocation, hurt investment performance. And eventually Exxon got enough gonads to say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going back to our core business. And so it really does impact companies. It's ridiculous. And the coal industry is another example where they just forced divestiture of coal. And coal is incredibly efficient, very low cost, and very important in so many different parts of the world in terms of providing energy. This was all pushed by ESG, not science, because a lot of the coal investments and coal as an energy are quite clean now. You have clean coal and they're very responsible. And so again, this is a very important legal case to help straighten out the market.
Yeah, we've got scrubbers and so forth. There's no excuse not to use it. And I'm sure they didn't punish China for being a
No, of course not. Of course not. No, China, India, all these other large countries we're competing against, they can do anything they want. And in fact, they use the coal, but they don't do clean coal, and they're polluting the world. Meanwhile, we're being very responsible over in the West.
Yeah, they want to wreck the West and just continue this wholesale movement of wealth and work east. Trump is trying to change that, and he's having a certain degree of success. But it's not easy. It's a war. I do have to mention the amount of money here, agreeing to pay a little less than $30 million without admitting any wrongdoing. So that's what Vanguard is on the hook for. Now, for a company that size, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of money, frankly.
It's not, but it's a move in the right direction, and they know they've lost the case, so it sets a precedent. So I'm optimistic that they will back off some of this. In fact, what's happened with Vanguard, BlackRock, they have allowed large pension funds that buy their index funds to do their own investing on the proxy. So they've actually backed off, and they've given some of that power back to the actual asset where the assets originate and the actual pension fund companies. And so that's a plus. I mean, at Rocklinc, we're very careful about voting all of our proxies and voting them, again, with the way we think a free market should operate according to long-term fiduciary responsibilities. And so that's one of the reasons why if you have listeners and they're just buying index funds, they actually are giving their money over to a lot of these organizations, which will then use their money to vote against them and vote against the free market. So be very careful about the mutual funds that you're actually buying and know how the proxies are being voted.
Yes. And let's see, there's also another story here that you wanted to talk about, geopolitical and domestic fragmentation. And you were mentioning the Juno news report on the selling out of parts of Vancouver. This is craziness. What do the REITs do in a case like this where the entire land has apparently been relinquished to a native Indian band out west? This is just lunacy.
What it ultimately means is that we're going to be hijacked for more and more money because we'll have to pay them off, all these bands. We're handing them money. We're handing them back sort of title to some of this property and we're sharing this title. It's very confusing the way they worded. But at the end of the day, we're setting ourselves up for basic highway robbery. They're going to put the gun to our head and say, no, you owe us money, that these weren't settled. And therefore, you owe us billions and billions of dollars. And that's what's coming, Mark. And this is just outrageous. We're actually setting up our own robbery against ourselves. It's just unbelievable to watch this. It also will discourage investment. And you're going to be very careful in some of these regions investing if you're a mining company or a resource company. And BC is a very rich country in terms of province and land and resources. But they're going to have a harder time attracting capital into that province with this kind of lunacy and property rights really not being respected. So that's another long-term mark against BC. We're seeing already the pulp and paper industry. Jobs are being lost. Forestry is being impacted in a dramatic way. And so this is bad news for BC, which is now running some of the largest deficits in terms of percentage of GDP as a province in Canada now.
Yeah, if you're a land developer, you want to build housing, or people you have a chunk of land that you want to develop for single family homes or whatever. Now you have to pause and think, if this Indian band owns it, what are we selling here exactly? They've undermined property rights, and it's the feds that have appointed these radical judges They come up with these crazy decisions. I hope that these judges themselves end up paying for their own decisions, but somehow I doubt that's the case.
Well, let's hope they have all of their net worth tied up in property on these lands.
Yeah. They will have gotten exactly what they deserve. How do people get in touch with you and find out more? Because we raised some issues with Vanguard and BlackRock and these massive companies and how they've tried to manipulate the economy by pushing these ESG policies and diversity policies. And Rocklinc doesn't operate like that.
No, we control all of our proxies. We're going to vote them based upon the old school and no woke policies, no ESG policies that are at least detrimental ones. We're very concerned about the environment, but we want to use policies, again, that are properly well thought out and are respectful stewardship of the environment, but not pushing these woke agendas. Yeah, so you can contact us at rocklinc.com, ROCKLINC, link with a C. And you can send us an email at info@rocklinc.com, and we'll respond right away. We'd love to hear from more of the listeners. We've already had a number of listeners contact us and become clients, and we'll do a free review of your portfolio and let you know how we would structure it maybe differently. And I would love to work with you. So just contact us and we'll be right back to you.
Rocklinc.com. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I appreciate you coming on the show once again.
Thank you very much, Bart. Keep up the good information flow.
Thank you, sir. Jonathan Rocklinc.